We can start. Just a few seconds anymore, and then we can start. So hello everyone, my name is Tarek and I'm part of the International Sales Department at Ezisurg Medical. It's our great pleasure to welcome you to the first Belt and Road Bariatric Surgery Symposium. The topic for today will be the latest trends in the bariatric surgery in the year 2021, and every speaker will introduce the latest trends in this country. The first thing I would like to do is to introduce the guests for today. I would like to give special thanks and appreciation to our chairman, Professor Khalid Mirzaghari from KSA, Professor Yong Wang from China, and Professor Hazem Al-Momani from UAE, who will be the moderator. Additionally, we have our panelists with 4 more speakers. We have Professor Nengwei Zhang from China, Professor Bassam Safadi from Lebanon, Professor Ashraf Haddad from Jordan, and Professor Mohey Al-Banna from Egypt. I would like to thank you all for your contribution in today's webinar. It's a pleasure for us to have such an international group of speakers with us here today. And considering your excellent reputation and your rich experience in the bariatric field, your contribution will be necessary to make this event successful. It's a pleasure for Ezisurg Medical to support the bariatric education and to provide a platform where the top surgeons and physicians can come together and discuss like the latest trends in the bariatric surgery. And with this Belt and Road webinar, Ezisurg wants also to tie on the ancestors who initiated around 1,200 years before by connecting the East and West via the Silk Road. And this despite of the long distance and the huge difference in geography and culture. And now Ezisurg is committed to do the same in an academic way and to become the bridge between the East and West in the academic world. I would also like to thank IFSO for endorsing this event and support the organization and promotion of this event. It is really helpful so more people can benefit and learn from this session. Lastly, I would like to thank everyone who will join us today, who took his time to follow us, and I'm pretty sure everybody will learn a lot from today's session. Therefore, I wish you all a great and informative webinar. And now I would like to give the word to our moderator, Professor Hazem Al-Momani. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Tarek. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for the first of hopefully many others to follow of the Ezisurg Academic Club. As Tarek just introduced us, we will be talking today about the latest trends in bariatric surgery in the year 2021. I'm very humbled to be among such a cohort of colleagues who will be sharing with us their experience going all the way from China down to Egypt. I would like to thank Dr. Khalid Mirza, Professor Young, who will be our chairman today. I would also like to welcome our speakers. Should any of our audience have got any questions to ask, please just post them and I'll be more than happy to share with our speakers. Professor Wang from China, welcome. It's a real pleasure to meet you. Would you like to start this talk and then I'll move on to my dear colleague, Professor Mirza?
Okay, thank you very much. And welcome for all of the professors from Africa and from Asia. It's my pleasure to be the chairman with the Dr. Al-Momani, and also it's my pleasure to meet all of the friends here on the website. Because of the COVID-19, make it easier for the international communication for the conference I present, because without the virus, we have to fly for several hours together to have the conference. But now it's much easier. So we'll be, it's my pleasure to study many techniques from all of you. It's my pleasure. Also, it have about at least 6 hours difference at the time zone. So we'll have about 2 hours to together talk about the bariatric surgery. Okay, thank you very much, and hopefully we have good time, 2 hours here on the website. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the lovely introduction. Professor Mirza, any first words to launch this event, please?
Yes, I agree with Professor Wang. Really, we had a lot of issue with the COVID-19 and we suffer a lot. But if we have something positive, this is what we have. We learn how to meet. We meet each other more frequent than before COVID. So this is, at least we can say we have advantage of COVID virus. Other thing, it is very nice to have share our experience in this part of the world, which is we can learn from each other. We know that the culture is different, that the geographic different and genetic different, but at least we are in one boat that dealing with the same disease, fighting with the same disease, different weapons, but different land, what we can share and learn from each other. And this one of the this meeting, one of example of benefit of sharing the information, and we learn from each other. And I'm very happy to hear from everybody and learn about their experience and management during this last 2 years. And I would like to welcome everybody, and we will enjoy this meeting, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mirza. Right, so without further delays, I would like to introduce my new acquaintance, Professor Wei, who is joining us from China, and who will be talking to us about the latest trends in bariatric surgery in the year 2021 in China. Professor Wei, the mic is yours. And if I may ask our other speakers to close their cameras, and feel free to share your screen, Professor Wei. Professor Wei, can you hear us?
Yes.
So right in the middle, there's a share screen, the green button. If you click it, and you will be able to see your desktop, and you can take us through your presentation.
Yeah, Dr. Zhang, you can share your presentation.
当然，我马上共享一下，共享一下。
Okay.
Fantastic. We can see your screen now, Professor.
Good morning and evening, everyone. Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Zhang, come from the Center of Metabolic Disease, Beijing Sijitan Hospital and the Beijing Capital Medical University. So, you know, the weight loss surgery in China started in 1982, when the first case of open jejunal bypass was contacted. So, we know laparoscopic VGB and RGB started in 2000 years. So this is the timeline, and LIR-YGB started in 2004. Our hospital and our center is become from 2005. Now our team have 8 doctors and 20 birds. We estimate more than 500 cases performed, surgery performed in 2021. You know, Chinese Society for Metabolic and Pediatric Surgery established in 2012. This is estimate of pediatric surgery numbers in 2020s. It's more than 10,000, 14,000 cases. This is kind of average surgery. It's not, the number of surgery, maybe laparoscopic cases procedure is more, is percent than 19.7%, and this is the other cases. This is sleeve gastrectomy is 82% disasters. So in China, it's this is sleeve plus procedure. It's maybe look in this. This is endoscopic surgery in China, 2020. Okay. Now, today I will be present my operation. The incidence of gastric cancer in China is relatively high, and gastroscope cannot be performed after RYGP surgery. So we performed sleeve plus BJB for people with a family history of gastric cancer in order to preserve the structure and the function of the paroidus. We use hand zoom to achieve the anastomosis. I will show you here. This is an open duodenum. We can see the paroidus. We measured the total intestine, the lungs. This patient total lungs is 740 centimeter.
Professor Wei,
Yeah.
while we're waiting and watching this interesting surgery, can you tell us, do you have a fixed length for measurements, or is it a ratio that you use when performing such surgery?
Two 200 centimeter from trace ligament.
And this is the same length you would use for all cases, regardless of their BMI?
This patient BMI is wait a moment, please. 35.
So if you get a patient with a BMI of 50, will you still do 200 centimeters, or you would increase it?
Yeah. Yes.
I think in China mainland or the East Asia, the major procedure for DZB is just use the bypass of the 200 centimeters of the small intestine, the jejunum.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it will be CDs. That's my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, appreciate your input.
Thank you. There's also the other issue that need to be overcome and improvement in China. First of all, in China, the insurance coverage for the cost of surgery is varied by province, with a huge difference and relatively low coverage. And secondly, the training is very important. They are the host for more training center and development of surgical techniques, and a professional and specialized team is vital for institute planning to provide such service. And this is my the speak. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Can I please ask, what is the prevalence of obesity in China? Is it such a common thing?
Sorry?
I wanted to understand the prevalence of obesity. How common is obesity in China? Is it a common pathology that is prevalent in society, or is it not so common?
Yes, I think it's very common in China mainland now, more than 10%. Yeah.
Okay. And the other question I wanted to ask before passing on the questions to my colleagues is, you've mentioned in your talk about endoscopic bariatric procedures. Can you tell us more, what are these procedures that you guys are performing?
我没听明白的。
内镜
endoscopy. Endoscopy maybe more than less than 1%.
And what type of procedures are they performed endoscopically? Is it endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty or other things?
Actually, I think, may I answer the question? Actually, I think endoscopy operations is not permitted by the government, just including the balloon and also the endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty. It's just for investigation, some experiments. So I present in China mainland, we only follow up the laparoscopic operations. Some center, they just do few the open operations, but for endoscopic operations, just less than 0.01%. Only in some hospital in Jiangsu, they can follow up this kind of procedure for experimental destinations. Thank you.
I understand. Fair enough. But I'd like to give the floor to my colleagues if any of them have got any questions, please.
Yes, so I think Dr. Momin, you asked about the length of the bypass 200 dimension. Is it the standard 200 or they are adjusted based on BMI of patient? Because 200, I think it's too long in our area. We don't do 200, it's too much. We use, in some cases, we have criteria when to do to 200, but standard for all patients, especially you mentioned BMI 37 or 30, which is
35.
in our area, 45, 35?
Yeah.
Which is in our area, this part of the world, it's too much. If you have any comment regarding this.
他觉得我们太低了，是吧？Sorry.
So what Professor Mirza was saying is, I would assume we can copy your experience similar to the one anastomosis gastric bypass surgery. And there have been lots of publications about the BP limb and preferably to go below 200 because of the side effects with regard to the protein calorie malnutrition. And is this something you guys would face in your practice, or is the Chinese population different to our population? It'd be great if we can share your experience with us.
Yeah, I think that most of the procedures in East Asia is finished by Dr. Kasama and his Sli-Ruai DZB, just bypassed 200 centimeters. So I present mainly in China mainland, most of the surgeons just follow this for the 200 centimeters of the small test bypass. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But I think I should have had something to ask. Yes, please, Ashraf.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, doctor, for your presentation. I think measuring the total small bowel is key in anything but a very proximal bypass. But why do you measure the total small bowel if you perform a 200 centimeter standard BP limb? Just to make sure there's enough distally to give you a chance to adjust. I mean, I would like to hear your thoughts.
Dr. Zhang, 就是问你为什么做这个 ？Sorry, I have to translate it.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
他问为什么
very
既
interesting
然你
discussion.
只转了200厘米的小肠，你还要去测量全部的小肠长度？
这个我就想那个了解一个数据，我所有的人都做这么一条。
Okay.
Yeah.
Professor Zhang just want to collect all of the data for China mainland. Totally, how about the total lines of the China, the Chinese, the total lines? Actually, I think in China now, many surgeons just do this work. They just collect all of the lines of the small intestine for all of the Chinese data. Yeah, not for these cases. Just for the future. Yeah.
Because the length of intestine in Chinese is very different. We find the shortest is 450 centimeter, and the longest is 1,100 centimeters. So it's very different. We just for everyone to measure it.
Okay.
Thank you. Right. Well, without further delays, if you guys don't mind, I'll be moving on to a colleague, Professor Al-Banna from the Division of Surgery at Ain Shams University, to talk to us about the latest trends in bariatric surgery in the year 2021 in Egypt. Professor Al-Banna, the mic is yours. And if you don't mind, share your screen with us and your presentation.
Thank you.
Hello, can you see my screen now?
Definitely, Professor. We can hear you and see you clearly. Please.
Okay. So I'll be talking about latest trends of bariatric surgery in Egypt. And despite the public and state interest in obesity in Egypt, obesity in Egypt has only worsened. It has not improved. The prevalence of obesity is increasing. The latest numbers that we have show that female obesity has increased from around 29% in 2008 to about 41% in 2016, and it's increasing. And male obesity has increased from 24.7% in the year 2008 to around 31% in 2016. It's noteworthy that diabetes mellitus in Egypt affects around 16% of adults. And there are reports that around half diabetic patients are overweight or obese. So bariatric surgery has gained momentum, has increased exponentially in Egypt. And I think if we talk about trends of bariatric surgery in Egypt, we need to talk about awareness and desire, the number of operations performed, the numbers of surgeons doing bariatric operations, about the trends in training and research, the types of procedures that are commonly performed in Egypt, and the types of staplers and devices used in Egypt nowadays, and our marketing trends with all their problems. In the year 2000, when bariatric surgery has been in its was in its infancy in Egypt, bariatric surgery was only for the rich and daring, those who can afford the cost of the operation and the cost of post-operative supplementation and follow-up, and those who would accept going through a risky operation to cure obesity and diabetes. But in the last 3 years, bariatric surgery has spread across all socio-economic classes, and marketing campaigns and state interest raised the awareness of the public of obesity risks. Additionally, we have the social media, and in the era of Instagram, obesity has become an unbearable stigma, especially for young people. That's why indications for bariatric surgery have expanded. And now we have patients with BMI between 30 and 35 seeking bariatric operations. People saw the results, and metabolic surgery is gaining momentum. Now we have diabetic patients, patients who are obese with type 2 diabetes mellitus seeking bariatric operations because they know that these operations can cure them of diabetes. In Egypt, obesity is not limited to a certain socioeconomic class. Probably poorer classes have obesity because they depend mostly on carbohydrates for their diet, but higher classes, they eat high-fat diet, and so there is obesity in all classes. And at the same time, there is a demand for bariatric operations in all classes. What's really remarkable in the last few days is the cost reduction of the procedures. Bariatric surgery was expensive in the early days because we only had two companies, Covidian and Johnson & Johnson, and only a few surgeons could perform bariatric operations. But now the cost is down to around between 1,600, even 1,500 US dollars, up to 6,000 US dollars. And devaluation of the Egyptian pound has participated in reducing the cost of the procedure. So we have many young surgeons doing the procedures. We have devaluation of Egyptian pound, and of course we have new companies, especially from China, and all that contributed to the reduction in the cost and making the operations more accessible for more patients. We don't have real numbers, we don't have statistics, as we do not have a national registry in Egypt. And in the last 2 years, COVID-19 pandemic had its impact on the number of procedures performed. But I guess in the last few months, we are back to near usual bariatric practice. The estimates are that we have between 15,000 and 20,000 bariatric operations performed in Egypt each year. Numbers of surgeons performing the bariatric operations has been progressively increasing in the last 3 years. And as much as we have surgeons dedicated to bariatric surgery, specialized in bariatric surgery, we have surgeons, general surgeons, who are doing bariatric procedures, especially sleeve gastrectomy, which is considered by many surgeons and patients as an easy procedure. How they get trained? Usually they are assistants of bariatric surgeons, and they grow to become independent surgeons. So the training model is mainly apprenticeship model. Research is a personal effort because we do not have national data. Most of the research is motivated by the need for promotion or by associations with international organizations and the need for to become published. The common procedures performed in Egypt, we have standard procedures, and most of the procedures performed are standard procedures, but unfortunately we have standard and obsolete bariatric operations still performed in Egypt. Of course, sleeve gastrectomy, I guess, constitutes between 70 and 75% of the procedures performed. One anastomosed gastric bypass is the most commonly performed bypass procedure. And we have the SESI, the single anastomosis sleeve ileal bypass. I guess constitutes around 10% of the procedures performed. Roux-en-Y is only performed for documented reflux esophagitis or as a revisional procedure. Non-standard and obsolete bariatric operations, we still have surgeons promoting and marketing the greater curve plication and what they call the butterfly gastroplasty. Vertical banded gastroplasty is still performed because it's cheaper than sleeve gastrectomy. Probably have 1 or 2 surgeons still performing lap band, though the number is declining. And we have 1 surgeon promoting the undivided transverse loop gastric bypass, but I guess this will disappear soon. So this is the SESI procedure, the single anastomosis sleeve ileal bypass, with its anastomosis performed around 2.5 meters from the ileocecal junction. And we have its new version, what's called SAS-J, sleeve single anastomosed sleeve jejunostomy, with the anastomosis performed at around 200 centimeters from the DJ. And this is the butterfly gastroplasty, which is still performed by some surgeons as a modification of the vertical banded gastroplasty. Some of them performed laparoscopically. I hope it disappears soon. So the devices and the staplers, we have now Chinese stapling technologies, and actually they have proved their effectiveness. And I think that next year the market share of Chinese stapling technologies will increase. Ligasure is the leading energy device in Egypt. It's cheaper, much cheaper than harmonic scalpel. Other devices are very rare. Marketing, it all started with direct marketing from the surgeon to the patient. But in the early days, marketing could be performed only on newspapers. And then we have TV ads and medical shows where bariatric surgeons appear and talk about their procedures. They bring patients on TV to talk about their experiences. And in the last 5 years, we have the social media. And social media have changed the scene completely and has a heavy impact on surgical practice. The impact actually of social media marketing on bariatric surgery and plastic surgery is unprecedented. They are used to direct patients to certain procedures. They affect patients' choices. Now you have patients coming with the decision they want to have this procedure. If you do not perform it, or if you tell them that it's not the procedure appropriate for her case, she would go to another surgeon to perform the procedure that she wants. So we still need more scientific, objective data and the guidelines to direct the practice, to correct the practice. Thank you very much.
Professor Al-Banna, thank you very much. I mean, it seems that what you're describing will be echoing what probably a lot of us in the Middle East are sharing. If you don't mind, I just need to ask you to give us your input with regard to medical tourism, with regard to bariatric surgery in Egypt, because we know that Egypt is a big provider for bariatric surgery for other countries within the MENAC area.
Well, yes, because of the marketing campaigns and because of the internet that's crossing borders, and because of the cost reduction and the ability of surgeons to perform the operations in ambulatory centers and small medical centers or hospitals, so they can promote the procedures, they can promote themselves, and they can perform the procedure with less cost than other countries. This draws patients, attracts patients from other Arab countries to come to Egypt. And many patients consider the operation, the bariatric operation, an easy thing to do. Some of them would ask for a day case procedure. So yes, we have this, which is sometimes good and sometimes bad. We know the bad sides of that. You don't have proper follow-up. Sometimes you have the patients with no report of the procedure performed. You don't know actually what was done for the patient, and you are faced with a patient who has problems, who needs supplements, probably needs revision or something, and you don't know what was performed. Another reason that the patients come to Egypt is the indications and the strict guidelines in some of the countries. We don't have strict guidelines, so I can perform the operation for a patient with a BMI of 30 or even 29 if the patient asks for the operation, and there is no control for that. So that's another reason.
Definitely. Well, any questions from our colleagues
Yes.
in the Middle East before I ask my Chinese colleagues for their input?
Thank you for presentation. I just want to ask Dr. Banna, do you have in Egypt bariatric surgery guidelines under umbrella of societies or implemented by the government, by Minister of Health? Guidelines is evidence-based issue and will keep that standard and safety for the patient and for the surgeon and for the community. So guidelines now is one mandatory to be available. Do you have any guidelines with bariatric surgery?
Of course, we have guidelines, but we do not have an authority to implement those guidelines. We are working on updating the guidelines, and hopefully in the next conference of the Egyptian Society for Bariatric Surgery, we will have a session on updating the Egyptian guidelines for bariatric and metabolic surgery, but still we don't have any power to implement those guidelines. So surgeons and patients are still free to do what they agree to do.
I mean, I believe unless there's a political will, it's very difficult to convince the medical society to enforce these guidelines. At the end, we're just colleagues and we do our recommendation, but we don't have the authority to implement it. Our colleagues from China, have you got any questions to Professor Al-Banna from Egypt? Because Egypt within the Middle East is probably one of the biggest providers of bariatric surgery. It's a hub where patients from all around the Middle East visit. They've got very experienced surgeons, very high volume units. Is there any questions that you'd like to ask?
Actually, I'm interested in the, I think Dr. Abed also finished some double channel for sleekectomy, right?
Sorry?
Double channel. Yeah, I found that you showed your operations in Egypt that for the sleekectomy plus the plus pylorus digital bypass, right? Yeah, is that double channel?
I saw the
So
video.
you do a sleep plus procedures.
How many procedures in Egypt can finish for this kind of procedure? Because I found that some surgeons in China, they can also finish some this kind of procedure, but I don't know, is that much better than just the sleekectomy? I have no idea about that. Yeah.
The question about SASI, the single anastomosis sleeve ileostomy.
Yes.
We have a few publications on this procedure. We have some centers and some surgeons who are interested in doing these procedures, and they have published their results. Their publications show that the results, the outcome of the procedure is better than sleeve gastrectomy, especially for diabetic patients.
Okay.
And especially for hyperlipidemia and hypercholesterolemia. That's very interesting because they gave very good results with hypercholesterolemia. And of course, they think that some of the food would still pass through the duodenum, and that would result in less need for supplements after the operation. I'm not sure of that. But one of the advantages is that it gives an access to the common bile duct in case the patient develops gallstones and common bile duct stones. And the other advantage is that we resect the distal stomach. This is one of, I guess, one of the reasons of unexplained pain in some of the patients after one anastomosis gastric bypass. So it's, from my point of view, it's a functional one anastomosis gastric bypass with resection of the distal stomach.
Correct. I think you're right, Professor Al-Banna. The published results would show comparable weight loss to other standard bariatric procedures with a higher metabolic effect, as you mentioned, this hyperlipidemia and hypertension and the diabetes. Ashraf, you've got a question.
Yes, a question and a comment about the SASI to Dr. Muhi Al-Banna. I think in your slides it was mentioned that it's 10% of the procedures in Egypt.
Yes.
Wow. Do you perform it yourself?
Well, I've done a few cases. I don't have long-term results. I started doing it recently. So my numbers are not great, so that I cannot give conclusions. But I'm working on the follow-up of the patient so that we can hopefully perform a controlled randomized trial comparing the SASI with the one anastomosis gastric bypass.
I agree. I mean, I had to look at the literature for an IFSO project recently, and there is no data whatsoever about the SASI, not even basic science. So someone like you at an academic setting would be very key in documenting what happens to this patient, because it's based on a hypothesis that it corrects enterohormonal imbalance that's not proven. And recently, I met a patient who had a SASI at another institution who presented with like a feculent odor, very foul smell out of his mouth. Have you seen anything like that, since you've met a lot of these patients in Egypt, probably?
No, I haven't seen that, but the remarkable, let's say, complication is the biliary reflux. That's the one thing that's really a concern in these cases. Actually, one of the problems is that the procedure is not standardized, because the anastomosis could be done very close to the pylorus, could be done as a transverse anastomosis close to the pylorus.
Correct.
And it could be a vertical anastomosis far away from the pylorus. So it's not the same procedure all the time. And even as regards the size of the sleeve, what size of bougie would you use? How much of the fundus would you dissect? Is it a restrictive procedure, malabsorptive, or a combined procedure? There are lots of questions that we do not have answers for.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very insightful. Moving on to our dear colleague, Dr. Bassem Asofadi, who will be talking to us about the bariatric surgery situation in Lebanon in the year 2021. Dr. Bassem has recently moved to Qatar, and he's the chief of the surgical services at Amman Hospital. Bassem, thank you for joining us. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hazem. Thank you, Dr. Khalid, for setting this meeting, for Professor Wong for an invitation, and for Ezisurg Medical. I don't know if you can see my slides.
We can see you and hear you very well, Bassem.
Great. So this is the first Belt and Road Bariatric Surgery Symposium. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be with you. I would like to start by greeting our Chinese colleagues with the universal greeting, hello, ni hao.
Thank you, hello, hello.
And a greeting that we use commonly in the Middle East, Assalamu alaikum, or peace be upon you. I will try to pronounce it if I can. Zhuning Pingan.
祝你平安，祝你平安。
Zhuning Pingan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So this is an IFSO sponsored or meeting, so I have to disclose. So I do receive honoraria for consulting and training from Johnson & Johnson, Covidian, and Ezisurg Medical. As far as my case mix, I do mostly sleeve gastrectomy. I do some gastric bypasses and a lot of revisional surgery. So I'm very happy that I'm invited to this meeting. I think discussing a little bit of politics is important, and especially to what's happening in Lebanon. So my talk will be more focused on politics and economy rather than surgery. The Belt and Road Initiative, as you know, was proposed by China in 2013 to link China to the rest of the world, mainly areas in other parts of Asia, Europe, and Africa. And if you look at Lebanon, we are situated right between the three continents. So Lebanon should have a strategic relevance when it comes to the Belt and Road Initiative. For those of you who have not visited Lebanon or who don't know it, it's a very small country on the Eastern Mediterranean, only 10,000 kilometers, which is probably the size of a city in China, maybe. But we are blessed with a fascinating geography. We're one of the few countries in the Middle East that have mountain peaks that would reach up to 3,000 meters. There's snow for the most part of the year. We have an abundance of water relative to other countries in the Middle East. So we have lakes and rivers, and we have access to the Mediterranean. history in Lebanon is very old, goes back to thousands of years, and we have a lot of archaeological monuments to attest it. So a great opportunity for tourism for those of you who ever decide to visit Lebanon. Lebanon also is blessed with a very high standard of educational system, with top-notch universities, some that date more than 150 years ago, and we have up to date quite advanced medical system. Lebanon, though, has passed through a lot of problems. We gained our independence shortly after World War II, but ever since we had a lot of instability, mostly because of internal problems between the different sects and the communities that decided to form the country. So in addition to wars with neighbors, especially from the south, we've had a lot of internal problems and a big civil war that lasted from 1975 to 1992. The problem is that after the civil war, the country was given to the warlords who started the war. So instead of forming a decent, modern government, they kept the same feudal system into the government system. And that's why we kept having problems up till last year. The main problem we are facing now is a Ponzi scheme. For those of you who know the Ponzi scheme, the government has been lending or borrowing money from the central bank for the past 30 years. The government is the largest employer. It's very inefficient, has a lot of corruption, and all this time has been given subsidy to fuel, basic foods, medications, and medical supplies, so they're relatively cheap. In the meantime, the central bank was borrowing money at very high interest rates from commercial banks, and the central bank was giving the money to the government. And the commercial banks were taking money from individuals, from people at very high interest rates. And that really killed the economy, because when the interest rates are high, nobody wants to work, everybody wants to put their money in banks. So all throughout the cycle, as much as $100 billion evaporated over the past 30 years. And now we are facing the biggest economic crisis we have, the biggest hyperinflation, where the money value has dropped significantly from 1,500 Lebanese pounds equals to $1 to more than 10 times in less than 2 years. And as you can see, the rate of poverty is increasing at a very high rate. Not only that, but last year there was a big explosion. I think probably most of you, if not all of you, have seen it on TVs, that destroyed about 1/3 of the city, led many people who were already suffering from the economic collapse to shut down their businesses. At least 3 major hospitals were destroyed at the time where the COVID situation was pretty bad. And our port, which is central to the Belt and Road Initiative, was also destroyed. And we don't really know the economic impact on this in the long term. There was a feeling that the government did this. Many people tried to protest, but in vain. People were not able to change anything. And that what led many people to feel despair and emigrate. I'm one of those people who decided to move my family out, and I moved to Qatar to start all over again after having lost most of what I made in the past 15 years. Just to tell you a little bit about bariatric surgery in Lebanon. So obesity is a big problem in Lebanon. The rate of obesity is as high as 28%. And even in children, the rate is high, relatively between 10 and 13%. Most hospitals provide private healthcare, either in private hospitals or university hospitals. We have some public hospitals, but despite the $100 billion that the government has spent, the public sector is very poorly funded and completely disorganized. The bariatric surgery field, as we discussed earlier in Egypt, is also not regulated. We tried to write guidelines and circulated, but once we delivered those to the Ministry of Health, nothing further was done. It's a similar story to Egypt. We have guidelines and etc., but we don't have any authority to establish it. For example, disposable material are often re-sterilized and used, and there's no regulation to that. We also established a registry for bariatric surgery, but unfortunately, it's inactive. As far as payers, most patients pay out of pocket in private cash. We have some private insurance company, although limited, and some public payers. The bariatric surgeons are organized through the Lebanese Society for General Surgery. Last time I checked, we had 48 members, 7 executive board members. 3 of those left, 1 to the United States and 1 to Belgium. So how does bariatric surgery status tie into what's happening in politics and economy? So when the Civil War stopped in 1992, at that time, open surgery was popular. Surgeons did open VBGs and open gastric bypasses. And in the early 1990s, the lab ban was quite robust in Lebanon, and we were among the early countries that adopted laparoscopic gastric banding. At that time, the economy was flourishing. We had a lot of tourism, medical tourism from mostly Arab Gulf countries. A lot of patients would come from Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and other countries to have bariatric surgery, although it was not cheap, but the patients liked the high standards of quality, and they also had the chance to do some tourism in Lebanon. In 2005, our prime minister was assassinated. And from that moment on, everything in Lebanon, including politics and economy, started deteriorating. We also had a major war in 2006. From that point on, medical tourism from Arab countries essentially stopped, but that was replaced by tourists coming from Iraq. And despite that, the cost was still fairly high, between $8,000 and $15,000. But again, patients used to come to Lebanon because of the excellence or the high quality of medical care. Over the past 3 years, with the COVID situation, with the economic collapse, the number of bariatric surgery, which peaked in 2015 at 3,000 per year, started declining. Again, the number of tourists declined tremendously. On the other hand, the cost of the bariatric procedure dropped significantly because of the devaluation of the Lebanese pound, and also because the subsidy on the medical supply by the government, although it was broke, was still present. So you could find these disposables very, very cheap. And some centers would, for example, do a sleeve gastrectomy and with only $1,000, and the surgeon would still get decent income from this. Now that the government has no more money, we are expecting that the subsidy will go away, and then we have to import those in US dollars or in fresh money. And that's why it is essential that we look for high quality products that are less expensive. And as Dr. Banna mentioned, in Egypt, I suspect that in Lebanon, the Chinese staplers will probably predominate in the next year. So this will conclude my talk. I want to wish our Chinese colleagues a happy China Independence Day. And I would like to thank you again for giving me this opportunity to present, and I will welcome any questions. It's not independence, it's the national holiday, right?
Yeah. That's the Chinese holiday, the national holiday. Yeah, thank you, thank you.
I heard you take 1 week off. Is that correct?
Yeah, the longest holiday besides the Chinese national. We have just 2 7 days holiday. The next one is the Chinese Spring Festival. Yeah, Chinese.
Okay. And it's tomorrow, right? October 1. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bassem, as always, a real gentleman. Thank you very much for the interesting talk. If I could say anything is I'll take this opportunity for all of us here to wish Lebanon and its people a recovery from the current difficulties it's going